Okay, so I'd like to introduce everybody today to Jan Cobb and Judy Barclay. Yeah, you won't really see anything up there on the screen. And we are broadcasting live from Full Life Ahead in Birmingham, Alabama. And this is a week series where we do broadcast with people in the developmental disabilities that have experience and have expertise. And this is our first big one, so I am extremely excited. And I will let both of you introduce yourselves.
Well, I'm Judy Barclay, and I'm a parent, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Full Life Ahead Foundation.
And I'm Jan Cobb. I'm also a parent, and I'm another founder of the Full Life Ahead Foundation.
Now, are you two originally from the Birmingham area?
I grew up in Mobile.
In Mobile?
And, came to Sanford, married my husband, and have been here ever since. We raised our family here.
Sanford's the middle, is it just south of here?
It's in Homewood.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What am I thinking about? And Judy, are you originally from this area?
No, I was born in Jacksonville, Florida. My dad was a supervisor for a big construction company. And when we moved to Redlands, California, and then Memphis, Tennessee,
oh, wow.
and then Albert Lea, Minnesota, and then Birmingham, and my dad said, you know what? I like Birmingham. I think we'll stay here. And so I've been here since I was 6.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I call Birmingham home.
I've been here 2 years, but I absolutely love Alabama. My grandparents live in Alabama, and we used to come down every year and visit.
It's a wonderful, well-kept secret.
It is.
Yes.
It definitely is. So, if you don't mind, how did you two meet?
Go ahead.
Well, our daughters were participating in the Exceptional Foundation in Homewood and playing softball and other things together and became fast friends. And so Jan and I became good friends. And actually, Amanda and Denny had plans to room together when they reached that point. But that was not meant to be.
So you said the Exceptional Foundation. What exactly is that?
It's a social and recreational program for individuals with disabilities.
Okay.
Their main campus is in Homewood, and they now have one in Fairhope and Auburn, and I think that Atlanta is trying to get one.
And is it like a recreational league for like basketball and
They have all different.
They do all kinds of different
kickball
sports
kind of stuff?
and that kind of thing.
Is it
Yeah.
just focused on sports, or is it mainly focused on sports or other activities? Or
It's mainly sports, but they also do arts and crafts, and then they also have teams that go to Special Olympic events out of state.
okay,
So,
that's pretty cool. So you both met kind of through your children at that point.
Right.
yes.
And I know that even if children are friends, it doesn't always necessarily mean that the parents are going to be friends. So how did you two really come to form your bond together?
Well, we really just started working together. Judy had more of a background in the disability parent realm. You want to share?
Denny didn't have much of a transition in her school system,
Okay.
so we worked hard with that. And I got involved with we created, with her school system, we created a special education kind of advisory committee that was made up of parents and teachers and the special ed coordinator, and trying to get some interaction there, and we helped make some things happen. And then I got involved with Auburn University and the beginning of their transition conferences, and also got hooked up with the State Department of Education and helping them with their transition program, because when Denny was in high school, there wasn't one. And so I was helping them develop one. And then Denny was scheduled to have surgery for her seizures in September of 1996. And in July of 1996, Mabry Whetstone, who was the special ed coordinator for the state, and Dr. Phil Browning, who was at Auburn handling all of the transition education in the special education department, called me in and told me that I had been written in to the Systems Change Transition Grant for the state by name as the parent support specialist.
It seems like a common theme.
Yeah. And I said, excuse me, but I have not worked outside the home for pay in 27 years. And Denny is facing surgery, and there's supposed to be side effects, and I don't have time for this. And they told me to pray about it. And they said, you're already doing the work, you might as well get paid. And it's only a half-time job. And I'm going, yeah, right. At the same time, I had gone through a program called Parents in Policy Making in Alabama, which is a leadership program for parents of children with disabilities and individuals with disabilities. And it is an awesome program. And it was sponsored by the Developmental Disabilities Planning Council of Alabama. And it was just wonderful. And I really wish we still had this program in Alabama. It's a highlight. And Joan Hanna, who was the director, and Cheryl Matney, who had of the Dede Council, and Cheryl Matney, who had been the director of the Partners in Policy program, called me in and said that Cheryl was burned out and I needed to take the directorship of the program.
So you go from kind of like a part-time job to being the total director.
And I'm like, excuse me. And they too told me I needed to pray about it. They told me I was the only one who could just step in and do it. And I'm going, what are y'all talking about? And Cheryl said, here, there's a manual that'll walk you through it step by step, and I'll be here to help you. Of course, I never saw her face again. So, and this is only a half-time job. Now, never mind that she had been full-time, but they were willing to pay me what they paid her for half-time. So I went home and I prayed, and God told me to take both jobs. And I'm going, God, I heard an S. And he said, yes, take both jobs. So I did. I stepped out in faith and I accepted both jobs because they were grants and they didn't start until October 1st. And they said, it's fine. You can start whenever you want, whenever Denny gets okay. And then Denny had her surgery in September, and 36 hours later, something happened neurologically which the doctors could not explain, and God simply called her home. And so all of her organs that we allowed to be donated were donated. They were all good, and that was her last request. And then we brought her home and had a celebration service, and it was overflowing with people. They couldn't even get into the sanctuary.
That's amazing.
And it was truly incredible. And then I went to work. And that year with Partners, I was allowed to bring in anybody I wanted from out of state. I could select people from anywhere. And I brought in the best of the best. And then I brought in the best of the state to counter. So the participants got to see the best of the state and then the true best and make the comparisons of what was what.
And a lot of this work focused on the transition from the education?
Well, some of it did. You had to deal with early intervention and everything in between.
Oh, really?
With Partners.
So all the way through the education system, really?
Yes, in Partners, yes. But on the flip side, with the Department of Education, I was doing total transition.
Okay.
And we were setting up systems change transition grants throughout the state. And in the 3 years I was there, we set up 39 grants.
Wow.
And we got $10,000 grants from the Dede Council for each one of those to help with whatever they wanted to do locally. And with every grant, we helped them. We helped everybody there. We had a team that would go. And we had a special ed teacher. We had a technical ed teacher. I went to work with the parents, and we covered everything. And then we set up a community transition team with businesses and parents and people from the community, bankers and lawyers. And everything was just humming along because they were helping the kids from the schools go out into the community and get jobs. And the teachers and the schools and the community were all working together, and things were really working the way they were supposed to work.
I feel like that's a very crucial point of a lifespan there is the transition out of the education system.
Absolutely.
Not only for the individual, but also for the family. There's a lot of, and just from speaking with some families, I feel like a lot of people don't know that it's going to be a big change.
You're right.
You're kind of lulled along when you're in the system.
So-
That's the
why-
That's the whole thing about the book.
I do want to
That's
ask
why
though.
the train.
Yep, right.
The train is coming at you,
You see, it's
and
coming
it will
right
run
at you.
over you if you're not ready to.
It is.
Get on
I
board.
feel I've never been through that myself, but from speaking with families, either that are reaching that point, it's like, oh heck, so what happens now? And then families that are at that point, like somebody has to come home from work, and then families that have been at that point for a few years is like, I wish I would have known this before then. Kind of taking a quick step back, though, you spoke a lot about your experience, and Mrs. Cobb, were you kind of through that process as well, getting involved?
Well,
No.
Denny was a little bit older than Amanda, so they were a little bit farther along.
Okay.
Age-wise and in the process in general. So our family was very fortunate in that the school system had been very good to us and good to Amanda. So we had basically good experiences with the system, but I was just I just knew nothing. She was the expert that
So
had
it was
worked
like,
so long.
Mrs. Barclay, I have a question.
Yes.
And then-
Well, she had just worked with so many different people and situations, and by the time we got to know each other, she was the knowledge, and I was just, out there hoping for more information, and so she was kind of leading me along as we got started.
So you were kind of leading the path, and then Mrs. Cobb was like, hey, I'm going to need a lot of this. I have a lot of those questions that you're going through right now. So that's really how you two came together as friends between you two, not just your kids at that point.
Yeah. So then, one of my tasks at the State Department of Ed was to create a parent manual. So I contacted Jan, and we put together a group, and we put together a manual. But
It was a manual.
the
I mean,
State Department said it had to be 11-point courier
Yeah.
and very few pictures,
Yeah.
black and white.
It was strictly a manual, and if you wanted to go to the table of contents and find out exactly what bit of information, just like if you got a new car and you needed to look it up
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
manual,
Yeah.
it was. We tried to make it as accurate as it could be, but it was just factual information.
Not everybody learns that way.
No. And parents are, as you know, 24/7, 365 days a year.
Mm-hmm.
So if you took something this size and you handed it to them and you say, this information will change your life, they're going to look at it and glaze over.
Yeah.
So we tried, but it didn't work with parents.
Yeah.
But teachers loved it. Teachers
'Cause
really
it was
loved it.
Informational. It
Yeah.
was
Right.
very informational.
Well, it would be
And,
like,
and it was easy terminology.
I imagine it, for a parent, it would be like signing up for a year-long class. I mean, this is a huge workbook, and it goes through. It's like signing up to take a class.
Well, when we were able to actually do our own workbook through a grant, then we went back to what we thought would be fun and appealing and easy, and we put it in a real workbook form so that it has the things that we wish someone had shared with us, but in an easier to deal with. Let's look at the tabs. Let's look at what we need to know and go from there. And that's how we set this up.
So it really came from personal experience.
Very much.
You wish you had this workbook. When
Oh,
you
absolutely.
Were going through that process.
Absolutely.
And does the workbook, just so I'm clear, is it just the transition period, or what do you kind of discuss in the workbook?
Everything.
From birth, do you go to?
No, we really start with in the school. You're already in the school process, but it's ideal if people are more in that middle school time of life where some decisions and some looking forward needs to happen. We're trying
for
to...
instance, by the time the student is in the 8th grade, the parents and the student have to make a decision on what type of diploma they want. And that's really early to be making a decision.
I didn't know there was a type of diploma.
There are lots of
different types of
in
diploma.
Different states. This
Yes.
is different.
But those decisions you're saying are being made at the middle school level.
Well,
Yes.
because at the end of the 8th grade, you are charting a course for what you're going to take through your high school career.
Yeah, I guess you do have to pick between college prep or I
Right.
wanted to go work on car engines, but my parents wouldn't let me.
Right.
So,
Right.
But
It's that whole concept is that
So one puts you in career tech, one puts you in college prep, one puts you in a learning disabled type track that may or may not even give you a diploma and
Or
allow you to go to college.
that diploma, depending on where you are and how exactly that's set up, but that you might think will allow you to move to another phase, it really might not be what you
it's important
expected it to be.
to see that goal line, and if that goal line
Right.
is where you want to be, as opposed to there's a different path there.
Right.
So you guys really start, the meat of it would be, for the workbook, you cover a lot of things before, but you mentioned the middle school is where a lot of these decisions for later on in life really come about.
The timeline that we have at the very beginning starts at age 11.
Perfect.
You know, that's kind of when you need to at least be thinking through some things, you know, and like for me, we had already passed so many steps
I was
before
gonna say.
I ever knew, you know, knew what to even be looking for.
Did you have, when you began writing the workbook, did you go through all of your notes that you took in over the years? Like, I imagine you just take all
Well,
these
we
notes.
collected everything we could from everybody. There,
We did.
a lot of these things are not original to us. We may have tweaked them to fit our need, but everything that we had been collecting, we had files and files and files of.
Yeah. If you look at our acknowledgement page,
Right.
There's a good 15, 20 people being acknowledged.
well,
in
it's
the-
not just people. This is organizations and places where we did get information with their permission and use it, as well as people.
And as we have revised the book through the years, we've added things that have also, you know, healthcare needs, that insurance information, some things that have been given to us through various organizations.
I'm just going to take a quick pause. I believe that this workbook would help a multitude of families, especially if there are questions there. I'm going to do a short plug. And so if anybody is interested on where they can get this workbook, I am going to put it on the chat. So let's go to, and would it be fulllifeahead.org /workbook? And so there, we are going to control copy that. And let's go down here. I'm going to put this link in here if nobody else has. And let's make sure it pops up. Okay, there. So everybody can see in the chat here. The Full Life Ahead workbook is available at this location. And now I want to kind of take a step back. I feel like you cover a lot of information from ages 11 all the way through to community living. What would you say is kind of the biggest question or the biggest thing that you see that when families, they approach you, what's the most important thing that you see they're kind of not aware of? Or what would you...
There's several. A lot of families are not aware that vocational rehab services are being offered or have been offered to their children. because they are offered directly to their children in school. And many times their students do not know what they are, so they turn them down.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents don't have a clue. But that's the way it's set up. So they need to be aware that sometime at or later than age 16, every student with a disability will be offered vocational rehabilitation services by a counselor. And you need to be aware of that, because if your child does not know what it is, it's very likely they're turning it down, and they don't need to turn it down. They need to explore it and see what opportunities are available with that, because many, many things are available, from help even with getting a diploma or going on to secondary school, post-secondary school, to getting a job, keeping a job. I mean, it's just a lot of different options, and you need to actually see what they are before you turn them down. And many parents don't even know that that opportunity is out there. And every family weekend that we have parents that say, it's never been offered.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have people from vocational rehab at the camps who meet with those families.
Sounds like a little bit of a... Oh, I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off there. It sounds like a little disconnected that the school district is asking the kids if they want to...
No, it's not the school district. It's actually the counselors.
Okay, I gotcha. And they're asking the kids, hey, do you want this or do you not want this? And that can be overwhelming if it's something that's not fully understood. And if that individual is used to making decisions with the help of family members, they would probably defer to say, I'm going to say no at this time until I speak with my parents. And then at that time, it may not be brought up later in the day or kind of,
Very often, our kids who are in special ed programs do need extra support. So this is kind of a little bit of a disconnect, that they legally are addressed without a family member being involved.
Yeah.
So, and if you kind of mean like the counselor wants to have a one-on-one with the individual to make sure that nobody in the family is directing the life that maybe the individual doesn't want to have. So I can understand that from both perspectives a little bit, but I think the options still need to be given to both parties. Hey, we presented this to your son or daughter.
That's why we really want the parents to know that it's available, and they can pursue it, through their school. Who is our counselor, and how do I get in touch with them, or whatever means needs to happen.
I imagine that's a communication.
Awareness is our biggest thing.
Yeah.
And there's something that the federal government, through the Rehab Services Association, has recently put into effect, called PREATS, it's pre-transition services. And every special ed student is supposed to be getting these services, because there's a very large sum of money that your state rehab service unit is receiving to provide these services. And every student is supposed to be getting them. And so you need to make sure that your child is receiving these services.
And these are, you go through that in this workbook as well? No,
the PREATS is not in this workbook because it has come out since we published our new workbook.
Sounds like there's a revision to the workbook coming through. New workbook coming out.
There's always a revision.
Yes. Okay, so the workbook really covers 11 through 20?
No, there's no upper end.
Okay, so all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And continued success out there.
And it's for all types of disabilities.
Gotcha.
We cover everything.
So you have the workbook, and it sounds like that's where you guys really started to work together and to form your professional relationship there in crafting this workbook. However, Full Life Ahead is a full corporation. It's not just a workbook. So how did you go from that to incorporating a nonprofit?
Okay, so I left the State Department after 3 years. And I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months later, Susan Williamson, who was one of the ladies I worked with there, called me, and she said, Judy, how would you and Jan like to write the workbook you always wanted to write? And I said, what are you talking about?
What's the catch?
Yeah, there has to be one.
Yeah. And she said, nothing. I have gotten y'all carte blanche to write your workbook, design it, information. It's all up to y'all. You just need to come down here and sign your contracts. Through AUM, it was through the Southeast Regional Resource Center, which is one of the 6 federal resource centers that in the U.S. And so we did. And so we went down there and had nice contracts to design and write what we always wanted to write, which has lots of white space. The gray boxes, if you don't have time for anything else, read the gray boxes on the pages, because that's the really important information. But like Jan said, these tabs lead you to where you want to go. There is a table of contents, but this is the table of contents. If there's only one section that you need, then you go to the tab of the section that you need. And the tab, well, this happens to be Family Voices, which they allowed us to publish, Alabama Family Voices, and this is Transition from Pediatric to Adult Health Care. And this is an invaluable section. But on the typical sections, all right, this one, Staying Healthy and Safe. As you can see, there's lots of white space. One little tiny gray box.
Going back to my own daughter and her attention span and looking at what I thought would be functional and actually usable for her, that was one of our bases for the how-tos of putting things together. And there's all kinds of questions and answers and circle yes or no, or we really advocate parents making copies of some of these surveys and dating them and then putting them somewhere else in a file to come back and look at. Questions for our students are, would I rather work in the daytime? Do I do my best at night? Do I like to be with other people? Would I rather be alone? Do I like to be in small spaces, or do I want to be in the wide open? Just real general things that oftentimes we don't think about as an important
They can seem small,
but
but if you're distracted from a wide open space and you study in a cubicle,
right,
you're not going to be able to study.
Right.
So the whole idea is to look at what applies to your individual and what their needs and their wants and their interests might be, and to go that direction.
So you started out with the workbook, and at that point, when you wrote the workbook, was Full Life Ahead?
No. No, when we wrote the workbook,
it was strictly for
CERC.
Right.
And they sent them to every special ed coordinator in the 50 states and the territories, and to every director of a parent training information center. And then the orders started flooding in, and they were trying to fill the orders. And Betty called me, and the director called me in, and she said, Judy, I've talked to our principal investigator, and we agreed that if you would talk to your husband and y'all would set up a 501c3 for this book, we will turn over all rights of the book to you. And we're set up to create documents, but not to disseminate documents.
Gotcha.
So I talked to Henry, and we got with Jan, and the three of us decided to set up a 501c3. But we very quickly determined that just the workbook wasn't enough. So we started doing trainings all over the U.S.
Trying to help people understand how to maximize using the workbook, actually, is where we started.
Yeah. We were out in Arizona a lot, Texas a lot, New Mexico, California. Alaska.
Alaska, hopefully during the summertime.
Yes and no. Lisa went to Nome, and the snow was taller than she was. We both went to, I'm blank.
Not to Anchorage.
Fairbanks.
Yes.
Twice.
Yeah.
These were for week-long transition camps.
This is a lot of traveling. I imagine you guys weren't in Alabama very much during that time.
And then Henry and I went to Dutch Harbor and the Aleutian Islands. And those were great occasions with working and teaching not only the students, but showing the teachers new ways to do things.
When we were in Arizona, we were with all the special ed teachers from the entire state.
Yes.
That was a fantastic experience for them to share so many experiences, and then us to be able to share the workbook and our personal stories too. So
I can't imagine how many families and individuals you guys have touched just through the work that you've done with the workbook alone.
Well, and we frequently get asked how many people we've touched. And we can't say, because we give permission for schools to take copies of certain things in here and use them.
Yeah.
And they don't have to report that back to us.
Yeah.
So we don't know who.
It could be endless.
It could.
You know.
It really could.
And I think that's awesome.
Well, then we evolved from just showing people the workbook into workshops, and then eventually into family weekends where we try to cover so much.
So there are quite a bit of things that Full Life Ahead does, and I'll hold up this little. Actually, I'll see if you could hold that up, and I will put that in the chat as well. If you're wondering what that is 5 circles.
Yes.
If you would just tell us a little bit about that. And we won't go into depth on those circles, but
yeah.
you would just
Why
tell
don't
us.
I hold that one since it's flat, and you talk from that one.
Okay. Well, we're starting here the workbook, but actually, when we have our family camps, we really consider that the time when we're hoping that that families catch the vision, and the workbook then is a tool to help them evaluate and uncover and make some plans. And we could do a workshop for hours just on what's available actually in the workbook. But the whole idea is the discovery process.
I put it on the chat.
So
Yeah, we don't need it. But if you could see this right here, that link was just put in the chat. So if you guys would like a bigger picture, I am going to put the number in the chat. And you can go ahead and call in. Looks like we're still on there. Okay, close out of that. Oh, come on. We want to put...
What number are you going to put?
I'm going to put 205, if it will work. Let's try this one. 8281. Let's try that. If anybody has any questions, try calling that number. It is 205-779-8281. My phone should go off, and then you will be live on air, so please, appropriate questions. But if you have any questions at this point, feel free to call in. I would like to ask kind of a funny story. Is there anything that really comes up? You guys have been working on the workbook and Full Life Ahead for how many years?
17.
17 years. Is there ever a time that you remember, like, you couldn't believe there's just so much stuff going on, or something that happened at camp, or tell me a funny story, or like a great story.
Well, I've got a couple.
Okay, good.
Not necessarily about the workbook, but about our travels. One of our earliest trips was to Florida, and we had 2 days of presentations back to back, and it was Henry and Lisa and myself, and we had the PowerPoint presentation on the computer. It was before flash drives. And we got down there and we were going to run through the presentation the night before. And it wasn't there. So we called Ingram. And he said, I'm going to have to send it to you. But it's going to take 8 hours to get there. And we stayed up all night long waiting for it to come in bit by bit. And the 3 of us were in one room, and one person would be awake, and the other 2 were watching it. I mean, the other 2 were napping, and we'd take shifts, staying to make sure that it was still coming in so that we would have it at 8 o'clock the next morning. And then we presented from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And then they surprised us by taking us out for a nice dinner that lasted for 3 hours.
By this time, you guys are probably ahead on the...
And then they said, oh, and we've decided to grant your request and let you meet with the parents. So they took us back to the auditorium where there were about 50 parents that wanted to meet with us for another 2 hours.
Very nice Q&A session when you guys are probably...
With no sleep.
Yeah. And then we had to have another go the next day for another 8 hours. So... yeah, we can laugh about it now.
Well, back in the day, there were plenty of times, and they still, of course, happen, but when we were all set up for our presentation till the people got there, and then there was nothing.
Yeah.
Right, I mean...
A wonderful age of technology.
Yes, the technology has always been a challenge, as you can identify with.
We had a little bit of snafu today. I was having a little trouble connecting to the internet on my computer, so definitely know that we started I think 4 or 5 minutes late. I'm sorry, we told you guys 2 o'clock. So I appreciate you sticking around and allowing us to get through that technical difficulty. But I can definitely understand that. So
yeah, well, another time was in Fairbanks. I mean, the first year we went up there, they were providing all the food, especially the lunches, and all of the kids would go out every day, and they'd be going to work sites and seeing what type of jobs were available, for later on. But they took sack lunches with them. And some of these kids were big old Eskimo kids. I mean, they were big. They were making their own lunches. They were giving them 2 slices of white bread, 1 slice of cheese, and 1 slice of bologna.
that's it.
That's it. And then they could have an apple or a banana and a bottle of water. And that was a meal. And Lisa and I are going, that's not enough food. So when we went back the next year, we asked if we could have their budget and let us buy the food. And so they allowed us to do that. And then we supplemented it with $500 from Full Life Ahead because $500 was the budget. And we went to Sam's. They said they didn't have access to Sam's. So they were buying it at a grocery store. And we went to Sam's and we got them enough food and they were thrilled.
Yeah, they're probably loving it.
Yeah. And we also did all types of networking and games with them to help them know each other because they literally were from all different schools and things because in Alaska, they don't have school buses.
But they have like school sleds?
No, they have planes.
Oh, seaplane, they're just laying on the sea like the water?
Well, they have each village that has 10 or more has a school. But if they don't have 10, they fly them to where there's a school. So a lot of these kids were coming in on planes for camp.
That's crazy.
I know, it really is.
That's super cool, though. I think that's awesome.
That's your whole lifestyle is living in a little plane.
Yeah.
I went to visit Alaska, I guess it was 2 years ago. I have some family there, and it looked like the main means of transportation at that time, it was in the winter, was on a snowmobile. It's just like everybody's got a snowmobile.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when Henry and I went to Dutch Harbor in the Aleutian Islands, we were on a small plane. I mean, it wasn't tiny. It held 40 or 50. And it was about a 3.5-hour trip out there from Anchorage. And we got there, but it was so cloudy that the pilot made 2 attempts and said, I can't do it because Dutch Harbor, the landing strip is right on the water here, and there's a mountain embankment right here.
I'm good. I'm not a big fan of flying, but
Hong Kong.
And he said, I'm sorry, I can't attempt it. And there were these people in the back of the plane, and they're going, cluck, 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 chicken. And he said, I'm sorry. And I mean, they were egging him on like you would not believe. And we're saying, go back, go back.
Where's the parachute? I want a parachute.
Well, he didn't have enough gas to make it back.
Oh, my goodness.
So we
I'm
landed
done.
on an island that actually had a strip that would take the rockets that go to the moon. It had a landing strip that long. But there was nothing there but 2 little restrooms and a vending machine. And that's where we had to stay that night. No, we didn't stay there that night. We stayed there long enough for them to fuel the plane.
I was going to say.
Then we had to go back to Anchorage. And we got there about 3 in the morning. And they said, okay, go to your hotel, but be back here at 6. So we went back at 6 and got back on the plane. And that time he could get in. But those people were so mad.
That would probably be the last time I flew ever.
Oh, we would end that.
It was fun. It was fun. I mean, it was a great trip. And, you know, we worked with the kids and the teachers and everybody. And it was wonderful.
Okay, I have, we don't have any call-ins. And I hope that we're answering some of the questions here. I just want to kind of close out here. Do you have for any parents watching, what would you like to say to them right now?
Please get on the train. Find out what you need to do and, you know, find the resources and start getting involved. Because right now, while your student is in school, they are entitled to services. But once they leave school, they have to become eligible for services. And every agency and organization has different criteria, and it's much more difficult to connect once they leave school.
And our whole theme has always been that everybody wants to be a productive, contributing citizen. And that's what we want to enable our I say kids, they are still our ages, kids no matter how old they are.
Right.
But what we want to do is we want to give them the opportunity to be the absolute most they can be. And so what we've got to do is learn about what's available and help to project them into the very best situation.
And we believe that every one of them have gifts and strengths that will allow them to work in a field that matches those gifts and strengths. And that's what Full Life Ahead helps make happen.
That's really what we really strive for, is helping people to determine their strengths and then work in those strengths.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't tell you guys enough about Full Life Ahead. I've done some volunteering here at the offices. I've been out to camp, and everything that I've been a part of with them has been phenomenal. I think what they're doing for the community is above and beyond, and I'd like to thank you ladies, for really doing that. So, guys, please visit fulllifeahead.org. The workbook link is in the chat. You can also donate to Full Life Ahead by buying books for families, donating to the organization. It helps Full Life Ahead do a lot of the camp stuff. And thank you for tuning in today. this is being recorded and will be put out on other social platforms. So make sure to follow Facebook, Alabama Care, Twitter, Alabama Care, and YouTube, where you'll be able to interact with this media and visit it and share it with other people in the community. So at this time, I'm going to end our broadcast, and we will see you guys next week.